Please don't kill us." The storm had swallowed the world. Snow came down in great sheets, the kind that erased the earth from the sky, the horizon from the distance, until even the sound of your own heartbeat felt muffled. On the western trail, half buried under drifts, 5 women huddled together inside a broken wagon. The horses had frozen and died 2 nights ago, the wheels were half gone to rot. Their blankets were thin, their breaths short clouds in the cutting air. Hunger gnawed their insides, fear gnawed even deeper. Mary, the eldest among them, pressed her shawl tighter around her shoulders and whispered to the others, "Hold together, girls. Dawn'll bring some sign of life. It must." No one answered. What hope was left to speak of? For 3 days, they had been abandoned by the men who promised to lead them west. Promises of homesteads and new beginnings had turned to betrayal. The men had ridden off when the storm struck, leaving the women with nothing but an empty wagon, a half-bag of flour, and the cruel hand of winter. Sarah, barely 19, rocked back and forth. "They'll find us dead. Just like Mama said, the plains don't forgive." "They won't find us," muttered Rebecca, her voice sharp. "We'll be snow and bones by spring, and the coyotes will do the rest." It was Anna who broke down in sobs then, her breath hitching so loud it seemed to fill the ruined wagon. "Why would they leave us?" "Why? Because men lie." That came from Lydia, the quiet one, who until then had sat staring at the snow through a broken slat. Her lips were blue, her eyes dull with exhaustion. The silence that followed was worse than her words. By the 3rd morning, the firewood was gone, the flour nothing but crumbs. The wind shrieked through the boards of the wagon like wolves howling at the moon. When the sound of hooves broke through the storm, at first they thought it was the wind playing tricks. But then came the crunch of snow, the snort of a horse's breath. Sarah's eyes widened. Someone's out there. Fear struck them all at once. Their first thought wasn't rescue, it was death. Outlaws, deserters, men with hard hands and no conscience. The frontier was full of them. Mary gathered what little courage she had left and crawled to the opening. A shape loomed through the storm, a rider in a long coat, broad-shouldered, his hat rimmed in snow, a rifle across his saddle. His horse, dark against the white, looked near as frozen as they felt. The rider stopped short of the wagon, studying the ruins and the 5 pale faces peering out. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Anna whispered the words that had lived in all their throats. "Please, don't kill us." The man didn't move. His face was hidden by the brim of his hat, but when he finally spoke, his voice was rough, low, carrying something more than threat. "If I meant you harm," he said, "you'd be gone already." The women clung tighter together. Sarah whispered, "Then what do you mean to do?" The rider dismounted, slow and heavy, as though every step cost him. He pulled back his coat, not to show a gun, but to take out a blanket from his saddlebag. He tossed it toward them. "First thing," he said, "is to keep you from freezing to death." His name was Elias Boone, a rancher, though some would say hermit, who lived miles out in the hills. He didn't tell them much, not then, not in the storm, but his eyes spoke more than his lips. They were eyes of a man who had seen loss so sharp it left scars that no snow could cover. He set to work without asking. He cut branches with his axe, built a rough fire against the lee of the wagon, and forced them to warm their hands. He gave them strips of dried meat from his pack. He said little, but when Mary tried to thank him, his only reply was, "Don't thank me yet. Storm's not through. You won't last here." They looked at one another, hesitant, weary. "Where then?" Rebecca asked. "My place." It was Lydia who spoke the fear they all felt. "How do we know? You won't do to us what those others did." Elias paused, his rough hands stilling over the fire. He looked up, and the flames lit the hard planes of his face. "You don't," he said simply. "But you'll die here if you don't trust me." The women had no choice. And so, with trembling limbs, they climbed onto his horse, 2 riding behind him, others walking close as he led them through the storm. The journey to his ranch took the rest of the day and well into night. More than once, Sarah stumbled, and Elias carried her in his arms while the others followed. His silence was strange, not cruel but heavy, as though every word he spared had weight. At last, through the snow, they saw the outline of a cabin. Smoke curled from a chimney, the faint glow of firelight flickered through shutters. Inside, the warmth hit them like a miracle. Elias stoked the hearth, laid out furs, boiled broth from venison and roots. He moved with the efficiency of a man long used to tending only himself. The women, shivering and half delirious, ate and wept in turns. When the worst of the hunger had quieted, Mary asked, "Why? Why help us?" Elias didn't look at her. He stared into the flames, his jaw tight. "Once. I couldn't help the ones I should've. Don't ask more." And with that, he rose, set his rifle by the door, and stepped back into the storm to tend his animals. Days passed. The storm raged on, but within the cabin, life slowly returned to the 5 women. Their cheeks flushed with heat again, their hands steadied, their eyes grew less hollow. They took to helping where they could, mending clothes, washing dishes, tending to chores Elias had long neglected. It was strange at first, the balance of it. One man who had lived in silence for years, and 5 women who had been bound together by abandonment. Yet slowly, something like peace took root. Sarah laughed for the first time in weeks when Elias tried to fix a broken chair and ended up breaking it worse. Rebecca argued with him over the best way to season stew. Anna found joy in the ranch's old dog, who followed her everywhere. Lydia, ever watchful, began to soften her suspicions when Elias slept outside the first nights to give them privacy. Mary, oldest and most steady, watched Elias with the eye of one who understood grief. She saw the way he lingered over a locket he carried, the way his gaze sometimes drifted far beyond the cabin walls, as though chasing ghosts. One night, when the storm at last began to ease, she asked him quietly, "Who did you lose?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then, with a voice rough as gravel, he said, "A wife. A child. Fever took him. Years back." Mary placed her hand over his, gentle as snow on the earth. "Then maybe, Mr. Boone, saving us was God's way of saving you, too." He said nothing, but his silence was softer than before. When the storm finally broke, the plains were blanketed in white so deep it sparkled like glass. The wagon where the women had been left was buried almost to vanishing. Death had been close, closer than breath. But in Elias Boone's cabin, life had begun anew. 5 women who had thought themselves abandoned forever found not only shelter but something more, a home of sorts, stitched together by survival, trust, and the quiet strength of a man who had once been as lost as they. And though none of them said it outright, each knew the truth in their hearts. That the night they whispered, "Please don't kill us," had been the night he chose to bring them back to life.